In this video, I will demonstrate how to build a non-trivial application using Rails 8, Tailwind, import maps, SQLite, and the open source Flowbite component library. Throughout this process, I will extensively utilize AI, primarily through Cursor AI Editor, leveraging various AI models. I will rely heavily on the latest version of Claude Sonnet 3.5, which has proven to be the most effective model for writing code. So what will we be building? I'm not going to build a blog post, to-do list, e-commerce site, portfolio, or social media application. That has been done too many times. So let's go off the rails a little bit and see how AI can do in a less commonly replicated domain. Okay, we don't want to go too far off the rails. We want it to be relatable. Introducing HOA Connect. HOA Connect, as you can see from this picture, is scratching an itch for me because I belong to an HOA. Throughout this tutorial, I'm actually going to be using AI live and generating code. But to begin with, I started with ChatGPT 4.0 and created the requirements for our new application. And these are the prompts that I used. First, I would like to create a new software application that helps homeowner associations and residents communicate and report on related concerns. The two roles will be HOA administrator and resident. Can you generate user stories that represent this system? I would like them to be in Markdown format. As a result of that prompt, ChatGPT 4.0 generated these user stories. You can see I have 4 user stories for an HOA administrator and 4 user stories for a resident. Now that I have the user stories, I went one step further and asked ChatGPT 4.0 to create an MVP for me. With this prompt, I would like to start a minimal viable product so that I can get it in front of the users and get early feedback. Can you identify the highest value user stories for my MVP? I would like the results to be in Markdown format. As a result, ChatGPT 4.0 generated what I believe to be a pretty reasonable MVP. Essentially, for the HOA administrator, we have, I want to create and manage announcements, and I want to view and track residents' concerns. As a resident, I have 3 user stories. I want to submit concerns or maintenance requests. I want to receive announcements from the HOA, and I want to track the status of my submitted concerns. Okay, now that we have the requirements for our project, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start by opening up a terminal, and then we're going to create our Rails application. And I'm going to create this mostly with the defaults on Rails 8, which means I'm going to get SQLite, means I'm going to get prop shaft and image maps. But I'm going to specify here that I want to use Tailwind. I don't want JBuilder, and I'm going to skip system tests on this project. Let's go ahead and create this. And while that's being created, I'm going to go ahead and copy over our requirements into a requirements folder in the new project. I'm going to create a new directory in here, and I'm going to call it requirements. Inside of requirements, I'm going to copy over these 2 markdown files. Now I've got those 2 files there. Go ahead and close this, and it looks like we're done. So now I'm going to go ahead and open up Cursor. And I'm going to go ahead and close this terminal at this point. And within Cursor, I'm going to open up our terminal. We're going to be using that, of course. Then I'm going to also open up, using Control L, I'm going to open up our Cursor chat. And inside here, this is where you can choose the model that you're using. Default is the latest version of Sonnet, which just came out on the 22nd. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is create a rules file for Cursor. Cursor allows you to create a global rules within its configuration, or project-specific rules by implementing a .cursor rules file at the root of the project. I'm going to go ahead and implement that file. I'm going to come over here to chat, and I'm going to just ask it to create the root or the basic file for me. So let's see what it comes up with. So it comes up with a kind of a basic set of rules here. We go ahead and apply those, then we can take a look at them. I want to add some things to this rules file, and so I'm going to add it to our context. And then I'm going to say, can you add rules indicating that this application is built using Ruby and Rails version 8. I would also like to use Tailwind, which is already configured. Rails does that for us by default. I would like to use the Flowbite component library. I'm going to specify a version 2.5.2. I am using import maps via prop shaft. All right, let's see what that does for me. So it's kind of created some additional rules in here for me, just like I asked it to. You can see here, framework is Rails 8.0, language is Ruby, CSS Tailwind CSS, components library Flowbite, asset pipeline prop shaft, import maps true. So this is going to give our AI context to work from when it's generating code. I'm going to go ahead and apply that. So the next thing I want to do is set up Flowbite. Flowbite consists of a couple of files, a CSS file and a JavaScript file that we can download. And we're going to download those and put those in the project. And we're going to use import maps to expose them. The files I'm going to be looking for can be downloaded from these two URLs right here. You can see the CSS and then the turbo specific version of Flowbite. You can see it's the version that we specified in our cursor rules. So I'm going to go ahead and move those files over right now to the appropriate directory. Okay, now you can see that we've added to our vendor folder, we've added this assets, style sheets directory. And within that, we have our Flowbite CSS file. And then within the JavaScript directory, which was already there, we have Flowbite turbo min.js. And now we need to go ahead and implement these within our import maps. And we need to bring this CSS into the application HTML file. So we'll start with our import map RB file. And then we're going to go ahead and pin Flowbite here, pin Flowbite 2, and we don't want to go to the CDN, so we're going to delete that. We're just going to do Flowbite turbo min.js. And then while we're at it, in application.js, we need to import this. And we can just specify Flowbite since that's the name we pinned it as right in our import map file. And now for the CSS file, we're going to need to go over to our application layout. Okay, right here. We're going to need to add another tag, a style sheet tag for it. So let's just copy this one, put it all the way down here. Style sheet link tag. And instead of this, I'm going to say Flowbite. And we're going to go ahead and set it up the same way. Go ahead and use quote tags. And so that should be all we need to do in order to support Flowbite. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to use Rails 8 authentication. So I'm going to go ahead and generate that. Rails G authentication. And this is going to go through and create all of our models and controllers and migrations, everything we need in order to have authentication within our app. And I'm going to run our migration. So that runs all of our migrations. You can see here we have our users table, sessions, everything is there for us. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to start the application and make sure everything is working. It looks like we have an application on Rails 8, Ruby 3.3.4, which is what we're looking for. I'm going to go over to the login screen. Oh, looks like we have a problem here. Oh, it's not sessions, it's session, singular. Ah, we have a login screen, so we know our authentication is set up. And now while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we have all of the JavaScript files. So it looks like we have Flowbite Turbo in here. It looks like we have Stimulus. Looks like we have Tailwind. So I think we have everything we need to get going on this. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to just add a Flowbite Navbar. This will be a great way to check and make sure everything with Flowbite is working. And I'm going to want that anyway. So I'm just going to add a Navbar to the top of that. And I'm just going to use, again, Claude Sonnet to do that for me. I'm going to paste in a prompt, and then I'm going to add the application.html to the context. So now we have our layout file added to the context. I'm going to say I would like to add a Flowbite navbar to this file. On the left-hand side of the navbar, I would like to have a hero icon representing a home. And on the right-hand side, I would like to have a login link, and to the left of it, a Flowbite light dark mode icon. I would like this icon to toggle light dark mode. I would like the rest of the file to have classes that support light dark mode as well. So in order to give it a little bit more context, I'm going to go ahead and add a concern here. This is the concern that was generated with the Rails authentication. It's called Authentication. I'm going to add that to our context. And this may help it deal with anything that's related to authentication here. Let's see how this does. I'm seeing the dark light classes here, so I think everything's looking good so far. Okay, it's already added a login button for us and a log out as well, which is kind of interesting. And it's also generating the JavaScript to toggle between light and dark mode, and it looks like it's storing that in local storage, the user preference. So let's go ahead and apply this to our application file and see what this looks like. Looks like it's specifying a route path here, which we don't have in our routes file. I could ask AI to solve this for me, but I'll just go ahead and solve it. So let's define a route path here. And let's just make it sessions, session new. So the login screen for now. Let's try that again. Oh, great. Look, so we have our sign-in screen, we have our nav bar, we have light dark mode, and it seems to be working. And then we have the login, which of course is going to take us to the screen we're already on. And I'm assuming this is going to take us to the root, which looks like it does, which is again our login screen. We don't have any users right now, so I can't log in. I'm going to go over and check out the forgot your password page, make sure light and dark works here as well. And it looks like it does. So it's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and add all of our views so far into our context, new, edit, already have application, reset, and I think that's it. And then ask it, make sure that all of these view files support light/dark mode. Let's see what it does. Yeah, and sure enough, it looks like it's adding light dark mode support here. And so this is our one of our new files. It doesn't really matter because with the latest release of Cursor, it's actually smart enough to know where this file is. I don't necessarily have to have it loaded up in the editor. Let's apply that one. Let's move on to the next one. Let's go ahead and apply this one as well. You can see it loaded the file for me. Now let's move on to edit. Let's save that one too. And then finally we have reset. Apply it here as well. Now you can use something called Cursor Composer to do a lot of this work and then apply everything at once. But I actually found that I prefer actually looking at everything over here in the chat and just applying it after giving it a slight review. So you can see that our model kicked out a list of the things that it did based on our last prompt. You can go ahead and look through that if you need to, especially if you need to diagnose a bug and figure out what it did, or if you just want to learn a little bit more about how it handled this particular prompt. Refresh our page now. This looks good. Go to the login screen. This looks good. I think that's everything that we can view right now until we have a login. Why don't we go ahead and do that next? Let's just go ahead and create a login for this. So for that, I'm going to open up another terminal window here. I'm going to go into the Rails console. I'm going to user.all, and so I can kind of see what's in there. And I'm just going to do u equals user.new, and now I can see all the attributes on there. u.email, email address equals test@test.com, u.password equals password, super secure. I'm going to u.save. And now we have our new user. I can come back over to the browser. I'm going to refresh this and then just test. And we are logged in, and you can see it already switched over to our logout. But I do want to actually create a little avatar here that will give me a drop-down menu with the logout on it. And eventually we're going to be adding like profile and settings there. So let's do that next. Once again, I'm going to close everything here. And I'm going to open our application layout. Make sure it's in our context. Say, like that you added a logout button. Can you replace it with a hero icon that looks like an avatar, and when clicked presents a Flowbite menu that has settings and logout. Only show avatar if the user is logged in. I'm just going to wait and see what that does. So this is kind of interesting here because we don't need this. We loaded the Flowbite Turbo version, so we don't need to do this turbo load. This essentially just bootstraps the JavaScript for our menu item, but we don't need that since we use the turbo version of that. So let's just apply the HTML changes to this and then see what we have. Okay. Oops. Ooh, okay, so we have user.email, and that's a problem because I think it's called email underscore address. So let's look for email in here. I could have easily asked AI to fix that, but since it's so quick, I'm just going to do it myself. Okay, settings path. We don't have a settings path yet, so I'm going to have it fix that. I'm just going to take this, copy this, and I'm going to put it in context here. Okay, it's already going to do what I want it to do. It's saying, I see you want me to remove the settings link. So let's go ahead and just trust that it's going to do the right thing. Looks good to me. It's probably going to remove the settings menu item, but that's okay. We can add that in later. That's easy enough. And you can see now we're logged in. We have our avatar, and sure enough, we have sign out in the menu instead. Make sure this still works, and it does. And make sure our sign out works, and it does. And now we're back to login. Now that we have authentication taken care of, and it looks like we have pretty nice layout going on here, we can go ahead and move forward with actually implementing our MVP. So I'm going to come back over to our chat window, and we're going to put a couple of prompts in here. This first prompt is I'm just going to make it aware of our two markdown files. So I'm going to add these markdown files to the context, and meaning our user stories and our MVP. And with those in the context, then I'm going to give it a little bit of context here. I'm going to say I provided two markdown files. I think knowing the requirements outlined in the user stories document is useful. But to begin with, I would like to focus on the user stories I picked for an MVP. So that's great. Now it doesn't know what to do with that yet. So I'm going to add an additional prompt here. And this prompt is going to say, I would like to start with supporting the application authorization roles. As you can see, I have a functional login with some useful functions in a Rails concern. I would like to add support for the two application roles to this. Do you have any suggestions? And now I'm going to add a couple of additional files in here. I'm going to add this authentication concern, and I'm going to add the session controller. Just give it a little bit more context in case it needs it. And let's see what it comes up with. What I'm hoping for is that it's going to find a way to implement these roles. And so it looks like it's just going to add a role attribute to our user. It's going to be in a new with a resident and an admin. Looks good. Resident is going to be 0, admin is going to be 1. And then it's going to create an authorization concern that gives us some helpers here. Require admin, resident, and authorized user. And then it's going to include this concern in our application controller. And it looks like it's already moving into our requirements. And I'm just going to go ahead and skip those for right now. And then it looks like it's creating some links to our announcements and our concerns, not to be confused with the Rails concerns. These are actually HOA concerns. Add the role to the user. So this is going to be, we're going to need to do this. This is our migration. So let's go back up to the top here and start implementing some of this. Let's start with the modifications to our user. I think I see a problem here already, but we're going to let it fix it. Then we're going to add our authorization concern in Rails. Now we have our concern done, and let's make sure to add this concern, include this into our application controller. Looking good. And I'm going to skip these for right now. And let's just move on to our migration. And so I don't want to try to like modify this file name and add a timestamp in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and create this migration myself and then just copy the contents over into it. So I'm just going to do Rails G migration add role to users. I'm just going to copy the contents of this. I'm just going to run the migration real quick. And there's our role. All right, I realized that I need to augment our user a little bit. I need our user to have a few more fields in it. So I'm going to prompt a cursor, and I'm going to put our user model in the context. And I'm going to say, this looks good. The thing I would like to do is create an address model that is associated to a user. It should have this field street, street to, city, state or province, and postal code. Let's go ahead and create our model. It's going to create a migration. It's going to update our user. So yeah, this looks good so far. Everything looks good here. It is expecting street, but not street to. So it's smart enough to know that that should be optional. And yep, it's doing some normalization down there. Let's go ahead and apply that. Save it. And then once again, rather than having to punch out a timestamp here, I'm going to go ahead and create this migration. And this should be create addresses and I'm just going to, everything else looks good, so I'm just going to take the contents here. It's already got the timestamp in there, of course. Take the rest of this, punch it in there. Okay, we've got that done. And then I'm going to go ahead and update our user model. It's got it as dependent destroy, which is cool. And looks good, so let's run that migration. Looks good. Okay, before I get too far with this, I also realized that I need to add name fields to our user. So let's go ahead and prompt again and say, looks good. I need to add first name, middle initial, phone number, last name, allow SMS messages, and allow email messages to the user. So let's see if it can do that without me adding user again. It knows who our user is at this point. So let's go ahead and add that migration. Rails G migration add fields to users. And once again, we're going to copy the contents here. I'm going to look at these and make sure they're all the right types. So what do we got here? So we have first name, limit 1 on the initial. This looks good. Looks good. Phone number, booleans. Yep, this looks good. And now let's modify our user model. Looks like it's doing a few things here. So it's doing some validation for us on phone numbers, which is great. And it even gives us full name. Yeah, it's giving us a formatted full name, display name. Cool. So it's doing a few things for us here, which will probably prove to be useful. Okay, I think we have everything we need. Let's go ahead and run that migration. Okay, it looks like we have a problem with our migration. Let's see. One of the interesting things about Cursor is that you can actually use it to debug errors in the terminal. You can actually use it to write terminal commands too, which is kind of cool. So we're going to go ahead and see what this is saying here. I'm going to say debug with AI. Okay, so it's basically saying we already have a user record in there and we have a not null violation. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete our user records. Just going to go to the database. That should do the trick. Now let's try running that migration again. Ah, that looks better. Okay, so now we've deleted our user, so we're going to have to recreate a user, but we're going to go ahead and do that in a minute. Let's refresh and make sure everything loads. Nope, it looks like we have an error, and this is the error I anticipated we're going to get, changing the syntax here for creating an enum. Let's see if we can get AI to solve this problem for us. I'm getting this error in my user model, and I can just paste the error here. And I'm going to, looks like it just shows that. So let's give the actual error, which is wrong number of arguments. Let's see what it does here. Yep, it's figured it out. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply that. So now we have the two arguments it's going to be looking for. Let's refresh the page. We got current user.email address. Okay, yeah, it looks like we have a session for a user that no longer exists in the database. So we can go ahead and solve for that. Just inspect. Let's go over to application. Let's look for cookies. And let's delete these cookies. Try refreshing, and sure enough, there we are, we're back. Since we don't have a user, we can't log in, but rather than just create a user in the database, I think let's move forward and go ahead and do our registration screen. So going back to Cursor, we're going to paste another prompt in there. And I'm going to put, looks good. I would like to scaffold the views and controller required for a new user registration. Can you help me with that? I already have our user model in there. I can't think of any other context it will need, so let's see what it does. Oh, it's kind of interesting. It's wanting me to generate the controller. That's cool. First, generate the controller. Here are the necessary files. But it's already got my controller here, so I don't need to necessarily generate it. It looks like it's added it to the routes. Cool. We got our new, and looks like it's putting our address and everything in there, which is cool. Count. Okay. We should have everything in there. So let's start at the top. We don't need to run this if we have this. Let's go ahead and apply this. We have our registrations controller. Let's add the routes. And it's created this, an alias for us there. And we've got our new file. And let's look at our address. Validate street. Yep. City, presence true. Yep. Everything is there. So we validated everything it expects us to validate here. The other thing I would like is a registration button or a register button up in our header. So let's open that application file again. And we got it in our context. Can you add a register button to the Navbar to the right of our login link? See what it does. Let's see if it can get the route right. It does. It's using our little alias it put in there. And so, again, it explains what it did there. But let's just give it a shot, see what it looks like. All right, looks like we have our register link right here. Let's see if it works. And it looks like it does. So let's give this, well, first let's try to create one and see if we get our validation errors. And it looks like it does. We do. We have password and password confirmation, which looks good. Everything looks formatted pretty nicely. Oh, but look, I see a problem here. Looks like our text is white on white. So let's get that fixed. And we happen to be on the right file here in our context. All right, let's go ahead and apply that and see what it looks like. No, we've got state. Okay, because I think this is supposed to be state or province. So let's go down and find that. Oh, it already knows. Oh, and I also see another error. It's supposed to be postal code. So let's see if that fixes it. Hopefully that's it. Okay, looks good. And it looks like it applied the light dark theme too, which is nice because that was what I was going to have it do next. It looks like it figured it out. So, and that looks much better. Okay, for some reason, oh, it cleared out our password. Postal code cannot be blank. It looks like it might be not picking up some of these. So I'm guessing it's because those are the fields that I renamed. So let's take a look at our registration controller. Yeah, here's our problem. Make sure I got everything else right. That looks right. Our address model, postcode, state, or province. That looks good. So we just try to submit this again. Okay, great. Now that we have the registration working, I went ahead and added a couple of accounts. I added an administrator and a resident so that we can test with that. And I'm going to go back over to Cursor, and we're actually going to start implementing the user stories that are in our MVP. So I'm going to add to our context, I'm going to add our markdown files, which includes user stories and the MVP markdown file. So we have those in there, and then I'm going to paste this prompt. And the prompt is, I would like to take on the HOA administrator user story number 1 and the corresponding residence user story number 2. An announcement should consist of a title and content, with the latter being a text area and a database column type. Administrators should be able to create and edit announcements. When creating an announcement, it should be unpublished until the administrator publishes it. And then let's take a look at this. I'm going to also add in the authorization and let's see, anything else I should add? I will add the current to make sure that it knows how we're dealing with our session user and sessions controller. Well, there's our sessions controller. Let's see what I can do with all of that. Hey, create announcements. We have what looks like a good migration. We have our application record announcement. We have our controller and route, specification, index file, form, and that is it so far. So I don't see an edit and new file in here, but we'll go ahead and create those after the fact if we need to. So let's start with our migration. And like I did last time, so that I don't have to hand scribe a timestamp, I'm just going to generate this. And then I'm going to copy these fields. I'm going to paste them in here. And there's our migration. And while it's on my mind, I'm going to go ahead and run that. Okay, should have that table in there. Now I'm going to create our announcement model. Save that. Let's try creating our announcements controller. I'm going to do this on the first try, so try again. This is new to me. Probably need to restart cursor. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Looks okay. I'm going to modify our routes file. Seems to work fine with existing files, but it's not creating the files like it should be. So I imagine we're going to see the same thing here. Yes, we are. So I'm going to reject it and then do it again. And accept and save that. And do the same thing with our form. And we have the same problem. Now at this point, I don't imagine we're going to see anything different here. Let's try going to the announcements page. And it just redirects us back here. So I'm going to log in as an admin. Here we are logged in. And I'm going to try to go to the announcements. Okay, interesting. So I'm getting this. A destroy action could not be created for the set announcement callback that is listed in the controller's only option. Let's just go ahead and copy all of this. I'm getting this error when I attempt to view the announcements index page. So it's got some modifications for our announcements controller. Let's open that up, see what it's going to do here, and then also for both for our announcements controller. See what this does. Set announcements. And then it's got a second alternative if you want to include the ability to delete announcements. Alternatively, huh? Correction announcement only show edit. Okay. I do want the ability to delete announcements, so I'm going to go ahead and undo that last change and then reject it. Whoop. Oh. That did not do what I wanted it to do. That's kind of weird. Okay, for some reason we lost our announcements controller. Huh. Well, that's interesting. Let's see what happens if we try to apply this whole thing again. Reject and apply again. Okay. So let's apply that. And save that before action set announcements. And let's go ahead and add destroy here. That's everything, so I don't think we need to do that, but publish, unpublish, destroy, set announcement. Okay. Push destroy. Yeah. I think we could just do. Well, I'm going to leave it here for now. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay, now let's try refreshing our announcements page. We do have an announcements page. Of course, we don't have any announcements on it, but we don't have the ability to add or edit announcements. So I am going to add our application HTML ERB to the context. And let's see, I should add this announcements controller, even though it should have that in context. And I should say, I am not able to add or add. Let's use create, edit, or delete announcements, even though I am logged in as an administrator. See what it does with that. Add some navigation, which is fine by me. So let's take a look at our user. We don't have that in there, so I'm going to add some additional context. I think it's a little confused. Authorization, require admin. So let's go ahead and add those two files. Mouse console, announcements controller. Okay, yeah, let's add some more files here. Announcements controller, user, our user model. Let's add our authorization file. Our context.html.erb, and then say, I don't think you add the required context, can and let's see, did I miss anything? Oh, the announcement model. Providing additional guidance. I see that you have a new for roles, which is 100% true. Current user, email address, that's correct. Sure. Announcements navigation. Okay, I still don't see our edit and create forms. Oh wait, this is on the index though, so let's see this. We got our announcements linked. It says role is resident. Okay, so I need to modify that to make it an admin. So Rails C all users, resident and resident. Sure enough, u equals user second u dot role equals admin. Let's see what happens now. Oh, sure enough, we're now an admin. It's kind of cool to put this little debug thing here. New announcement. New announcement doesn't go anywhere because we're missing the template, which is kind of what I told it. I'm getting this error when I attempt to add an announcement as an administrator. Okay, I believe we already have this form, but we do. Let's see what it does with that. Oh, it looks like it added our edit too, which is good, and our show. Okay, finally it's created the rest of our views. Okay. Our form looks like it's changed. I'm not sure what the difference is here, but we'll accept that. And we have our edit. And we're going to have this problem. So let's do that again. And then our show. Hey, that one worked. Maybe I'm just not being patient. Okay, let's try this, refresh. Then we have a new announcement. Okay, we got an announcement, and this is kind of nice. So it says draft by test 2. I can publish it, I can delete it, or I can edit it. I'm going to go ahead and leave it unpublished. I'm going to log out, and I'm going to log in as a resident. So announcements, I need to change that so that's not the landing page. Which let's do that now. While it's on my mind, let's go to the routes. And so announcements index, got that right. So now we should take us to the index. Cool. And there are no announcements. So let's sign out and publish that. There's our announcements. Cool. Looks like it is published. Looks good. Back to announcements. And we have our announcement. Cool. Now let's try that again. Whoops. Hey, cool. We got our first announcement. Cool. Looking good. I think we finished up our announcements for now. I'm sure there's some polish that we're going to want to do on this and maybe add some additional features later. But for now, we're done with that. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the rest of the user stories in the MVP. So I'm going to go ahead and paste a prompt in here. I'm going to do a lighter prompt this time around and see how it does. Trying to decide what I would like to add in the context. I think I will need to probably add, let's see, so let's do our authorization. Let's do our user, our current routes. I don't know if it'll need that or not, but we'll go ahead and add it. And let's add application, our template file. And let's see how it does with this one. Well, we need to add the markdown file. And let's add the user story one too while we're at it. All right, let's see what I can do with this. So I failed to read the prompt. So the prompt is, our first two user stories look good. Now I would like to implement HOA Administrator User Story 2 and Resident User Stories 1 and 3. Can you help? And so now it looks like it's following kind of the same process. Let's see how it does here. Looks like it's getting the controller right. The model looks pretty good. All right, let's once again, let's get out of the console. Rails G migration, create concerns. We're going to call these concerns, it looks like, and then give that a second to create it. All right, and let's copy our fields, paste them over here. And run it. Let's get that out of the way. Cool. Let's create our model. And it worked this time without making it do it twice. Let's create our controller. Let's see how we do here. Looking good. So let's see what our controller has. It's index, show new, create, edit, update, resolve, reopen. That's kind of cool. Set concern, that's some private methods, authorize concern, authorize admin. Okay, cool, looking pretty good. Now we can add a relationship to our user record. The user can have many concerns and assigned concerns. So it's allowing us already to assign a concern to an administrator, which is kind of cool. It looks like anyway. And then let's go ahead and add our routes. And it didn't create any of our views. And so I'm going to go ahead and tell it to do that right now. Yes, it looks good so far. Can you create the views? See if it keeps everything in context. It should. While it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and close everything. Okay, let's go ahead and apply our views. I'm going to start with the index page. I'm going to do a status badge, which is going to, looks like, indicate the status of the concern. The show file, and then new, edit, and then our form, and that's going to add the link to our application.html. Let's see what we have. Maintenance, new maintenance request. Created a concern. Cool. And so it allows us to, it shows us our pending, allows us to select a staff member to work on. It looks like it's only including the administrators, which is cool. Shows us our status up here, mark resolved and edit. And now let's go ahead and log out and log in as our resident. We got our announcement, maintenance. It's good that we can't see the other concern that the administrator created, so we can only see our own concerns. Okay, and it shows the status is pending. Let's sign back out. Let's log back in as our admin. Okay, maintenance. Looks like the resident concern is here. So we can view it. Boom, we can assign it. Let's assign it. Let's set the status to in progress. Update, now we show us in progress. And once again, I'm going to log out and log in as the resident. Sign in. And let's look at our maintenance. Oh yeah, cool. So it shows that we're in progress. Looks good. It doesn't show who it's assigned to, but that's okay. I don't think we want that. And announcements is the landing page now. Everything seems to be responding to light and dark mode. I think cursor is doing that now automatically. It knows how to do that. Oh, looks like I'm wrong on that. We can do a little cleanup on this. It looks like this one did not get the extra classes on it, but this should be easy to clean up. So that's the basic maintenance request or concern request functionality in our user stories. And with that, we actually have the MVP complete. Thank you so much for watching. In a future video, I plan on polishing up our MVP and implementing some stimulus and some hot wire to make it a little bit more interactive. Please, if you like the video, like, subscribe, and comment. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.